Right, so this video is a bit of an interesting debate. It's debating really whether or not ice should be used in an acute injury. So you know when you sprain your ankle and you want to reduce swelling, which is primarily bleeding, the aim is to try and reduce that swelling as much as possible, because the more you get, the more you've got to get rid of. The more pain you've got, the more restriction you've got, and it's all negative stuff, which is very, very true. So yes, if we can reduce swelling, we should do that. So obviously one of the things that's touted for this is using ice. Put ice on it. Have you iced it? Blah de blah. Now the interesting thing here is this has always been the case, but is it actually the right approach? Now the weird thing is, if you think about the utilization of ice for that reason, the aim is to vasoconstrict the blood vessels. So any bleeding out of the vessels that's getting less blood supply because of the narrowing of the vessel means that you're going to get less swelling out into the tissues. That sounds very logical and plausible. Now the interesting thing is in elite sport, or even non-elite sport, they use cryotherapy to recover faster between training sessions, between competitions, for injury and blah de blah. Now the problem you've got here is that the whole reasoning behind that is to increase blood flow. Increase core blood flow, increase blood flow to the tissue that needs it. So obviously you've got to remember the tissues are not superficial, they're not the skin, they're below the skin and sometimes very deep to the skin. So when you put ice on the skin, you're going to get vasoconstriction in the skin, which is going to divert that blood flow deeper into the body, which is kind of going to increase the blood flow, increase the circulation there, which makes a lot of sense for recovery, because recovering structures, the better ones have better blood supply and the more slower recovering ones have worse blood supply. So hence why cryotherapy, which can be cryo chambers or cold water submersion, ice baths, that type of thing, are utilized quite a lot for this mechanism. But that sounds complete opposite to the use of ice in an acute injury, because if you look upon it that way, if you injure yourself, so you tear your quad, then you're getting bleeding in the first several hours of that tear. So if you put ice on it, you're going to get vasoconstriction in the skin, and the blood therefore is being diverted deeper, which is where your injury is. Is that not going to increase blood supply to the actual injured tissue? Now there's also something called the Hunting's reaction, which basically where after a short burst of time, and it's relatively short, you get a vasodilation and then a vasoconstriction and then a vasodilation, and it keeps on repeating. And this basically will cause more of a pumping action, more circulation therefore. So it's an interesting idea, because you've got conflicting ideas on ice there, which are complete opposites. They're polar opposites, no pun intended. And obviously if you look at the logic behind mechanistically what's happening, ice seems to maybe increase vasodilation deeper to the injury sites. Now you might argue if it's a very, very superficial bony area type of injury, then perhaps it's going to do that. It's going to have the effect that it was utilized for. But most injuries probably are deeper than that, and therefore is it not going to actually increase circulation, increase bleeding out into the tissue, increase swelling? Now it's an interesting idea. It's just something that I've just been logically thinking through and looking at the two ideas. I mean, it's very much up for debate. I mean, I don't know what anyone else thinks on this subject, but it would be interesting to hear other people's thoughts on this idea, because it kind of blows a massive hole in the oh well, ice the injury kind of idea. I mean, me personally, I kind of almost think this makes so much sense that I've actually not really iced any injuries that I've had for a while. I'm not saying you shouldn't do all the other things that are touted, like compression and elevation and so on, but I don't know whether ice quite sort of makes sense. So yeah, there's a penny for your thoughts, and yeah, that's everything for the video, and I'll see you next time.